of a cold?
Keep asking that. Just get stuffy when it's cold outside.
Just concerned about you. So this is the third day of this 4-day retreat here in Tampa at the Franciscan Center. This retreat entitled Seeing Life with Clarity and Intelligence, the Path of Dharma. And actually for those of us here at retreat, third day really means in a 4-day retreat, since it's really spread out over 5 days. That actually today is our last full day. Tomorrow's just a half day. So we have been given very simple teachings, very direct and insightful teachings that have been passed down in our tradition for thousands of years to help us see clearly what's going on in this life. So we are not confused. We don't make poor decisions. We don't make right choices. And we don't get ensnared. We don't get hooked. And we can basically lead a good life of meaning and purpose, happiness, well-being. So again, to do that, as I've said several times, we need to have these fundamental perspectives. We could say we need to have the right perspective on life. You know, life is all this stuff that's going on. Life is the thing that we've been living in. That's life. Right? Everything that goes on this world is life. Without some sort of coherent view, it doesn't make sense. And left to our own devices, and I'll get into that today, we will develop a view of this life that is basically based on fundamental misperception, which then leads to wrong thinking, wrong values, the whole thing, and it creates a mess, the mess of this life. So it is essential at the beginning of our walking on this path that we have a right view. A right view will motivate us to find a path in life that is meaningful, and over time, if we practice with sincerity and dedication and diligence, that which begins as a view that is more intellectual or cognitive will eventually become much more intuitive and much more principle that we live by from the inside, rather than something that we need to constantly refresh ourselves with by reminders. The more we're able to see these truths that we're talking about in actuality in your own life, in the life of those around you, the more you will know them, right? And you'll know them from the inside. They become your truths. In the beginning, again, we need the map and we need the guidebook to tell us about the place we want to visit and to tell us how to get there. But once we enter the journey and make the journey ourselves, and once we actually get to our destination and get to enjoy all the places, see all the scenes, then we'll know it ourselves, and we won't need a guidebook. We won't need a map anymore, right? We'll know it from our own experience, and then we'll actually have the capacity of guiding others, since we've been there ourselves. We've been on the journey ourselves. We have looked in these past 2.5 days. We spent a whole day on impermanence. And again, without going over too much, as I've said to you, and I shared with you some of the words of the masters, the Buddha, to meditate deeply on impermanence will give you incredible mileage. Because impermanence is one of the most fundamental facts of our reality in everything. Whether it's our bodies, whether it's our mind, our thoughts, feelings, perceptions, mind states, emotions, whether it's the come and goings in the physical universe, in the world of interrelationships, everything is changing moment to moment. The person that walked in here a few minutes ago is not the same person who sits here and talks and who sits here and listens. We are constantly changing, you know. And once you understand that and are comfortable with that, there's great freedom in knowing that, because then you let go of everything, because you know there's nothing worthwhile grasping at, because it's all temporary, it's all transitory, you can't control it. So again, it needs to look deeply. I would certainly encourage you, if in our meditations on impermanence over these past days, in terms of the body and death, our death, the death of those we love, we care about, all your things, your possessions, you know, you name it, your money, you know, your car, you know. Please make sure before you leave here today that you have deeply understood that none of it can be grasped and held on to. All of it is impermanent. All of it has the potential of changing, slipping away, being lost, being broken. Everything. And so please make sure that you have given up your attachment to everything, not because you've made some kind of, I'm just not going to be attached to anything. In Buddhism, detachment, non-attachment has to come from understanding. Then it's real. Or else you're always just, you know, attaching, non-attaching, attaching, non-attaching. You know, it's a lot of work. It's, you know, getting attached, non-attaching, you know, seeing through things, getting caught, seeing through them, getting caught, seeing through them, getting caught. You want to get to the root of things. Right? You want to cut through it. And the way to cut through it is with wisdom, with understanding. Is that clear? You know, we want to see, that's why we want to see these fundamental principles of life, because when you see the fundamental principles, you realize they can be applied to everything. You don't have to go case by case. You know it. Right? You know everybody's death, including our own. Everybody's death is just part of life. Right? So it's no longer an issue. Somebody sent me a question. Can you explain the difference between normal deep sadness, such as child losing his mom, or a mom's child dies, and suffering? Again, I think that was answered last night when we talked about the three types of suffering. There is this in this human life, there's a suffering of suffering. It's just part of life. There is suffering, right? You're suffering today. Yeah. What are you suffering from? Headache, yeah. So that's the suffering, you know, they're just there's some sufferings people here maybe have aches and pains. I mean, you cannot have aches and pains unless you have a very wondrous yogic body and go through 2, 3, 4 days of retreat and sitting in one posture the way we do without having, that's normal, right? So there's all kinds of aches and pains. There's things that are more significant, and we all have the karma of our own bodies that unfolds in the way it does, and you know, that often involves suffering. Okay. You know, normal deep sadness. You know, when we get what we want, when something happens that we want and we get it, we feel happy, don't we? Right? That's normal. You don't have to manufacture it. You feel happy. Right? When you have a pleasant experience, you feel happy. You don't have to manufacture it, it just naturally arises. When we lose something we are attached to, we naturally feel what? Sad. Obviously, the more we are attached to something, probably the more intense is our sense of loss and suffering. In the realm of human relationship, a parent's relationship to a child is often considered the acme of attachment, right? And so therefore one could imagine that if there is a loss of a child, there is a great sadness. That would be normal. When that turns into suffering is when the normal course of sadness is not allowed to run its course, often, through other kinds of interventions. And so oftentimes, I haven't lost a child. I know some people in this room have, but I would imagine, just like any wound, over time, if it is taken care of, it heals. It doesn't mean, especially if there was a deep wound, that there may not always be a scar, and there may always not be, when that place is touched, a little bit of discomfort. But it shouldn't hurt as much as it hurt when the wound occurred, if we let it heal. We let it heal because we have understanding. Right? As I've said before, we understand that a parent's loss of a child goes on daily in our world, right? Thich Nhat Hanh often has the quote, every day 10,000 children die of hunger, I think he says, right? Well, 10,000 children every day dying of hunger implies 20,000 parents lose their child every day. Somebody can do the math. And that's just from hunger. Right. Disease, war, accident. So we are never alone in our suffering. And we often need to remember that. Right. So when we have a specific suffering, we can say to ourselves, oh, so this is what that's like. Right. All these years, there have been so many parents whose child have died, and I really never gave it a thought. I'd read about it and just turn the page. But now I know what it feels like. So it touches you. You'll go forward with a greater sensitivity to people who suffer like that. Right. Same way Catherine, when she here's somebody who's, suffers from migraines, you would have a special empathy for them. It's like that. So our own suffering can deepen our sense of compassion for the suffering of the world. If we see it just as our own, and our concern is only our own, then we're not getting it. We all participate in this world, which means we all participate in the suffering of this world. And so we should reflect deeply on that, so we do not let everything pass through self, but let things open into non-self. So again, I'd say to you over our next day, if there are any areas where you're still squeamish, you still don't want to go, you still get afraid, or something doesn't sit right, I would say please go there until you're really comfortable imagining the truth, that everything is subject to change. Any questions about impermanence? Oh, somebody had a question. Said, verse in the faith mind, all changes in this empty world seem real because of ignorance. I like that, quoting the third patriarch. So even impermanence is an illusion. Well, yes and no. All changes in this empty world seem real because of ignorance. Right? There is a saying that the more things change, the more things stay the same. But this is not quite that. What the third patriarch is up to is something much deeper than that. Outwardly, it appears that things are changing. Things are becoming this, turning into that, because of causes and conditions. That is certainly the way it appears, doesn't it? And yet when one looks deeply into it, which means if there is no sense of past and future, if there's no attachment to anything, if there's no naming or labeling anything, and things are just simply as they are, because even to say moment to moment is to create an idea that there are things called moments, right? That's just something we make up, right? Like to say, this present moment. There's nothing here called the present moment, is there? Does anybody see something here called the present moment? No, it's just something we make up to point us in the direction of this. But in Zen, we have to get beyond the words to see that actually what is being pointed to has nothing to do with the words. So the characteristic of the phenomenal world, the world of things, is that they are subject to change. But that is only from the aspect of the world. But from the aspect of truth, which is deeper than that, the way things really are. The idea that things are changing is not accurate. But yet it is accurate. It is like Maria said when she reads the Heart Sutra. What the hell does this mean? Right? Right? Form is emptiness, emptiness is form, form is not emptiness. I thought form and emptiness were two different things, right? And here they're saying they're the same. And then the Buddha, going on and on about there's no path, there's no suffering, there's no I, there's no here. It's like that. It's the same truth. The Heart Sutra is one of the most profound teachings the Buddha gave, because he basically nullifies his whole teaching. Right? There is no Four Noble Truths. There is no Eightfold Path. There is no awakening. So he's teaching there from the most profound understanding of the way things really are. But to say that does not mean that there is no change. Right? From the point of the relative world, the way things appear, things change. There is birth and death. There is coming and going. Right? But from a deeper level, it's all just just endlessly unfolding. But that's another retreat. So are there any questions about impermanence? The teaching of how to practice, how to look deeply into it. Yes.
I know this is another retreat, but just one follow-up question to what you just said.
Just pretend I didn't say it.
All the words, all the teachings, their fingers pointing. The Buddha mind that's rounded is the experience. And even that is inaccurate.
It's all inaccurate. The finger, the moon, just like that. Yes, Gunther.
I have more question about the technique. So I concentrated on impermanence, and specifically on the impermanence of our children. And I went back and forth between acceptance and being depressed about it. And that reminded me of my mother. I'm her only child, and in her mind, to which she is addicted, was thinking, I died a million deaths, and now she's 83 and I'm still alive. How do we make sure that we don't fall into this trap of getting addicted to painful thinking when we try to ponder on or meditate on the impermanence?
Well, again, you want me to repeat it? So Gunther Sain, in his own meditation on impermanence, specifically the impermanence of his children, he found he kind of went back and forth between understanding kind of the factual, realistic basis of that, at the same time, you said depression, but you mean sadness, I think. Sadness. Depression to me means something else. And then you referred to your mother, who is, I guess, worried about your demise her whole life, and it's been an endless cease of, the issue is, again, it's the analogy of at the truth, it's the analogy of the man hanging on the rope. Right? That's your question, How? And that's really the wondrousness of these teachings, right? Because most of the time we would shy away from that, right? But to say, it's like it's like a man hanging on a rope over the abyss. He sees what awaits him. He's only holding on by a rope, and he looks up and he sees a rat is gnawing at the rope, and he can't climb up enough to reach it. Okay, so that's in a very graphic way a description of the fragility, right, of our life, in a certain way that the control of it is out of our control, right? I mean, we could, I guess, talk about the rats being time, or you know what I'm saying, just gnawing away, and that at some point, we're going to fall. Right? Which you say, in itself, that could be pretty bleak. So it's all just about hanging on for dear life. And yet it says, actually, there are various versions of that. There is the version that I said yesterday, where it sees the flower and smiles. Just even in that, sees the flower and smiles. Right? Because in that moment of smiling, even though all that is true, he's being nourished because he's focused on what is right in front of him. Right? Another version of that in the Zen tradition is actually it's something like he sees or she, we'll update it, sees like a little fruit or something, like a strawberry or some kind of berry or something, and actually reaches out, actually lets go and reaches out and eats it. and of course falls. Again, that same, again, when you think about your daughters and the inevitability of their demise, but that's a known. I mean, the truth is, you don't know how the life of your daughters are going to unfold, do you? You have no idea whether good things will, you hope good things will happen, but you don't know, right? They have their own journey in this life. And just like in your journey in life, anything could happen, right? They're on their own journey. And that's just the truth. The issue is not to be scared, right? I mean, I guess you could be scared and lock them up, right? Sort of like Rapunzel, right? Right? You could take your daughters and find a nice tower somewhere and lock them up. But let's like Rapunzel, they'll still try to get out, right? Take up with the first knight who comes along, right? So, you could lock them up, right? I mean, can you see that, got to keep them safe, right? You want to keep them safe, but you realize that would be doing them harm. And then they need to be involved in this human journey the same way all the rest of us do, right? So again, when you are with your daughters, they are that flower. They are that berry. Right? Because you have contemplated impermanence, you know that this moment that you have together is a precious moment. Right? Right? I have children. Every time, I say goodbye to them, I talk on the phone, see them in person, bye, see you next week, or see you, but I know in my heart that this may be the last time that I'll see them. I may never see them again. And so that makes that moment precious. Right? So, this is, again, living with knowledge is a dangerous thing. It goes back to the Greeks. Right? Sometimes ignorance is bliss, but I don't believe that. We know that's not true. Those who've tried ignorance know that it really doesn't work that way. Right? But knowledge, does take some responsibility. Now we know the veil has been torn back. Right? And so that's why, these contemplations, if they are done deeply, turn us toward meaning, right? Turn us toward purpose, turn us towards wisdom, right? So we can, live freely and happily in the midst of the way things really are. But on the other hand, if anything ever happens to your daughters, hopefully it won't, but we don't know, do we? If and when it happens, you will not only bring your love and your sorrow, but also your wisdom to that, and that's something that also you can share with them, because they also are in their journey and are in life. Anything else about impermanence? So good, we're all clear. And then yesterday we got into this other very profound, the Buddha said to have right view is to have, is to see the Four Noble Truths. Right? And again, there is a truth about dukkha, but there is the truth about the cause of dukkha. Right? There is a cause. When you understand the cause, you have the capacity of causing the dukkha to end. Right? And therefore, the course is the way to do it. It can be turned around. You could turn it around and you could go, there is happiness in life. Right? These are four other noble truths. There is happiness and well-being in life. What are the causes of it? If the causes are created then happiness will be achieved. How does one do it? By walking the path. The Eightfold Path, you can turn it all around. The Eightfold Path, in a certain sense, there is suffering, there's a cause of suffering, but because there's a cause of suffering, there's an end of suffering, and the end of suffering we could call enlightenment, happiness, nirvana, well-being, and the Eightfold Path is the path to enlightenment, is the path to happiness. Those are the causes of the effects is enlightenment, cessation of suffering. Cause and effect. Again, it takes a long time, but just very simply, and this again has to do with right view and wrong view, wisdom, intelligence, clarity, or ignorance. When we perceive things incorrectly, when the basis of our mind's view of reality is shrouded in ignorance, it does not see the way things really are. It will perceive things that are impure as pure, things that are sources of unhappiness as sources of happiness. It will see permanence where there is impermanence. It will see a self where there is no self. And therefore will act accordingly. Okay? That acting accordingly in Buddhism is called karma. Karma means action. If the fundamental view of the mind is shrouded in ignorance, our actions, based on that ignorance, can only cause negative outcomes. But when one perceives correctly, according to right view, and again, right view is not a dogmatic view, it's not a theological view, it is a view that the Buddha and all the teachers and masters and you yourself will clearly see when you just investigate the nature of reality with your own mind. You don't need to read a book. You will clearly see, if you used the powers of your mind to look clearly and investigate, you will see clearly what causes happiness and what causes sorrow, whether things are permanent or whether things are impermanent. Whether there are really, this world is made up of solid, permanent things, including a self, or whether this world is made up of just composite pieces coming together temporarily. This is where the teachings of non-self and the teachings of impermanence come together. It is because things are empty of solidity, therefore they are always changing. If things were solid and permanent, nothing would ever change, right? You'd still look, we'd still be here just gobble-gobbling at each other. Right? Our parents would have had to brought us to retreat. Coming in every 4 hours for feedings. Changing us. But because there was nothing solid or permanent in anything, in our body or our minds, we are here today. We are here because everything is empty. And because there's no self or nothing permanent in anything called a mind or anything else, therefore we all have the possibility of change and transformation. Right? Healing is only possible because change is possible. Because nothing is solid. All those wounds of childhood do not intrinsically exist in any solid, permanent way. Therefore, they can be, they can be anything, right? They can be denied, they can be intensified, or they can be healed and transformed. Whose choice is that? It's your choice. But that is all because of the essential empty nature of phenomena. The non-self nature, which is another major view not to see things as solid. Bodies is solid, trees is solid, life is solid, feelings is solid, thoughts is solid, self is solid. Everything is just things that are just coming and going. Is that clear? To understand that is to have an enlightened view. And you might say, well, how, if I'm not enlightened, can I have an enlightened view? You study Dharma. As somebody said yesterday, Dharma is the teachings of the Buddhas and the Masters. It is where they are revealing their understanding to us. That's how easy it is. Oh, I just got to do a little Dharma study, attend some Dharma talks, reflect on it deeply, get it, and adopt that as my view in the beginning of my walking of the path. Eventually, it will become my view as my practice deepens. So, the view is the Four Noble Truths. The view is impermanence. The view is non-self. And lastly, the view is cause and effect. Before I go on to cause and effect, any questions? I'm kind of, we had a whole 6 months last year on deconstructing the myth of self. That's a teaching I give over and over again because it is so essential. It is, again, very much part of right view. It is one of the marks that all phenomena carry. All phenomena carry the mark of impermanence. All phenomena carry the mark of its potential for suffering, and all phenomena carry if attached, and all phenomena carry the mark of non-self. Yes.
So I hear you say the path to enlightened living is clearly spelled out. And it's not that hard to understand when I listen to you. Maybe I'm especially slow, and because I have been exposed to this now for several years, let's say 5 years. Wouldn't it be ideal, I was just thinking, and I think the situations are in Asia somewhere, instead of bringing children to nursery school, you bring them to Buddhist teachings, and you get them, as soon as they get out of their little home environment, and expose them to this type of teaching. And I wonder what they do in the monasteries in Bhutan and Nepal and so on. Then they bring in the 6-year-old boys. Are they then more enlightened, and do they have more understanding and fall not as often into the trap as I and maybe many other people do?
Well, that's an interesting question. Again, it's sort of a little side, so I can't go into it. So Maria's question is, well, if it begins primarily by education, which is really what you're saying, how do we? It's in terms of even ourselves, how do we educate ourselves to have a clear, intelligent view of life, right? And she says, well, wouldn't it be good to take young children and give them a view? And obviously the answer is yes. But anybody who's been involved in pedagogy knows children don't always listen. Right. So that certainly would be wonderful if some of these fundamental principles come very simply taught. And I think these principles can be fundamentally taught. Yeah, it certainly would be wonderful if they could be involved in education. And I think they would make a difference. And again, since they are facts of life, not facts of Buddhism or Dharma, that would be wonderful. And that would answer Gunther's issue about, how come people just don't get it, because, it's never presented to them. And the questions are never asked. In terms of what often goes on in monasteries in some parts of Asia. Yeah, yes and no. I mean, karma is karma. And even though many monks and nuns, especially the monks, often come in at very young ages, it's hard to say whether that kind of enlightened development really occurs, because most of them have not chosen. They are usually offered by their families. And so it's not necessarily that the children have this proclivity to Dharma. But the interesting thing in what you talk about in the Tibetan tradition, where they have this tradition of reincarnated, teachers, that's a very interesting thing. It'd be nice to see if there's a scientific study ever. I don't know how you do it. I mean, I know how you do it. It probably wouldn't pass the whatever that review board is for research. Because basically that's what they do. They go on the belief that they have found a child that is the rebirth of a prior master. But that is very much what they do. I mean, that is why they grab them young, because the idea is, having a body, having senses. If that is not trained in this lifetime, it's very easy that they will not kind of manifest the way they did in a prior life. So basically they get them very young, and they bring them to the monastery when they're 4, 5, 6, if they can, and they give them they put them in a very controlled environment. So basically, all the positives are nurtured, none of the negative seeds are watered, and my own experience, having spent years over there, when it works, it's quite wonderful. You meet people of great development, but it often doesn't work for various reasons. And again, on the other hand, it doesn't mean that there aren't many wonderful masters and practitioners who did it on their own, and they're quite wonderful too. So, anyhow, thank you. So, the Four Noble Truths: impermanence, karma. Karma means action. Action, again, in Buddhist teaching, if we might say, how does this whole thing operate? Right? So if everything is impermanent and changing, right, and if there is nothing solid in anything, right, then this whole, is it just chaos out here, right? Is it just random chaos? Right? One might say. If one doesn't believe that there's some kind of supramundane force guiding this whole thing, or setting this up, right? If there are no fates that are kind of scripting us, right? Then is this just a random crapshoot, right? Anything can happen. Right? Or is there some laws or principles that we can say are really what is kind of ruling, creating this unfolding in everything, right? And what the Buddha taught was this idea, a very simple idea of karma. I mean, in the writings there, of the Abhidhamma, there are many, many, many types of karma and actions of karma and propulsive karmas, and it's quite elaborated. But I don't think one needs that deeper study. It really again means that everything arises from a cause, or causes is probably better, And every cause is creating an effect. And if there is no self, if there is no supramundane deity, or no self to be held responsible for all of this, then basically we would have to say the working of the law of cause and effect is just unfolding on its own. Pretty much. Again, the well-known phrase in Buddhism, this is happening because of that. That happens because of this. Very simple. Why am I the way I am? Because of causes and conditions. Right? What are all the causes and conditions? The thoughts you have, the body you have. What causes it? What causes it? We would have to say what? What? Right. Parents, culture, family, society, all kind of experiences. Endless causes creating effects. Everybody here, why are we all different? Right? Because we all have developed within a matrix of different causes with different effects. Why are we here? Because of cause and effect. Why do I feel what I feel, think what I think? Why do thoughts arise? Because of cause and effect. Right? There's no mystery. The only thing that may appear mysterious, and again, you can buy it or not, is traditionally in Buddhism, there is another variable, which is that if you, and I'm not going to get into it, but if you believe in a continuity of energy, of certain kind of, we would have to say that there is a continuation of kind of the energetic imprint that goes from one life to a next. And so therefore, there is another variable beside the DNA and the genetics of one's family and the environment and the culture and all that there are certain propensities, karmic propensities, that we also bring with us. Which to me, since I buy into it, explains that even growing up in the same environments, beings are different. Beings are different. And to me, that idea that there are certain propensities, certain kind of propensities that are brought forth as seeds, and when they are watered in this life, they will grow. If they're not watered, they grow dormant. That is why they take them young and are very careful to water only the positive seeds and very careful not to water the negative seeds. Because they believe that reincarnated teacher has very many wonderful seeds already planted that just need to be lightly cultivated, and they will grow. So karma explains. It explains why your stepmother pulled out the pictures of her grandchildren on your sister's deathbed. Right? If you were willing to understand the cause and effects that has created her, you could understand there is no way in hell that she could have manifested in that moment as anything else than she did. It doesn't mean you couldn't have thrown her out. You see what I'm saying? I mean, it doesn't mean that actions can't be taken, but there's no anger, there's always understanding, because you understand. You know, this is just the unfolding, and she cannot help herself. That poor woman cannot help being who she is at this moment. It doesn't mean a minute later she can't change. Some other variable intervenes, right? But in that moment, understanding cause and effect, you understand yourself. You understand why your response. You understand why your anger. You know, it's like you understand the whole thing. You know, why is your sister lying there? Because of the karma of her body and her physicality and her life and her parents. I mean, they're all manifesting many, many variables. Some very dominant, some subsidiary, some ancillary, right? Right? You know, why are you there? Because of your karmic relationships to her. Why is your stepmom there? She's got, you know, and you see the whole thing is a setup of karmic forces, right? That are just playing out, right? You know, why is the world the way it is? People always go, why is the world the way it is? Because of cause and effect. Right? Messed up people create a messed up world. Right? People ignorant of the true nature of things and the laws of the universe, you know, who are living from ignorance, you know, they're grasping. They're angry, they hate, they want, they need, they see, you know, they see themselves separate from each other, right? They act out on each other, they're violent, you know what I mean? It's like, how else could they be, right? Cause and effect. Ignorant causes do not create enlightened effects. It cannot be, right? You know, that's why the teachers say, you know, Thich Nhat Hanh says what? Peace begins with me. You know, you want a peaceful world, become a peaceful person. How can angry people create a peaceful world? I mean, that's not cause and effect. In Buddhism, it said cause and effect actually are one. Right? Becoming a peaceful person is the creation of a peaceful world. You know, people bemoan, you know, that so many people are deaf to climate change and deaf to how the human beings are contributing to it, right? I mean, how could they not? Right? I mean, the human race, they're like children, right? They only think of what? Themselves and, you know, their own pleasure or their own needs, getting them taken care of right now, right? I mean, how could such immature beings, you know, think about things like, you know, the future of the world and future generations and seeing, you know, they don't understand how cause-effect works in their own life. Right? People are ignorant. Not ignorant, stupid, right? Many of them are very smart. That's part of the problem. But they're ignorant of the way things really are, right? Of the nature of this reality. So they don't understand interdependence because they're totally, you know, live in a sense of a self that is separate from nature. They don't see how things are interrelated. They live in their own little myopic, ego-centered world based on, you know what? Getting enough for me. Or even good things, you know, feeding my family, keeping my family safe. I mean, that's, you know, that's where human beings are, many of them. And that's not to judge, that's to understand. So until that changes, how can, when you get a lot of human beings together to deal with big issues, how can it be otherwise, right? So cause and effect. Why did he do what he did? Because of causes and conditions. Rather than getting angry, rather than despairing, rather than being hurt, rather than all the emotional responses that are based on our own ignorance. Because we do not see clearly that all that is going on is the unfolding of somebody's karma that is beyond their control. They cannot help being who they are. And because you think, in your arrogance and delusion, that they should be different than they are, we get upset with them. Right? Anybody disagree with me? Yes, Alex.
I disagree, but the subject of karma to me is it gets a little diluted when it's presented as cause and effect, because Brian the other day when...
But hold on a second, let me just clarify.
Yeah.
It is not a simplistic cause and effect. Many variables. You understand, right? That's a very simplistic, it's not that simplistic. Many variables, right? And really parsing out, the one variable is almost impossible. I mean, we do that. People say, well, that's my mother and me, but it's not, yeah, right. So it is, that's why it's said it's impossible to know, because where does it begin? I mean, the variable that was in your mother was in her mother, was in her father. That's why in the law of codependent origination, many, and there's just no way you can really separate it out. There's no beginning, no end to it. It's just this endless unfolding in which we are participating in. So I just wanted to, it's not the simplistic cause-effect.
Yeah, and thanks for that clarification, because the way I've understood karma to make sense to me is the teaching of movements of the mind with varying degrees of intention. How you think creates your world. So the other day when Brian was talking about, well, what's the point? Why should I bust my ass? Why should I do all this stuff? It's all predetermined. It's all cause and effect. And the reason is because to counter that nihilistic approach, which is can't do anything about the world, it's the way it is, I just have to observe it because that's the way it's going to unfold. You really can affect the world by the way you think, because that creates your world, and then that will be another cause that changes that variable, but you're doing it, and you're not depending on it out there to be done. You're doing it within that.
Well, you're doing, yeah. So, do I have to repeat the question? So it was a question. It was a question about. I'm playing your role. It was a question about karma. And whether, it's simply this kind of impersonal unfolding of cause and effect that one has no control over and can either go with or deny or whatever, or nihilistically just be resigned to, or is there, does the individual, let's say, much of a group, have the capacity of intervening? And you were saying, you were talking about, mind and the way one sees things, one's aspiration, all things can also very much affect how one relates. And you're absolutely right. And actually, in Buddhism, it is said that action is created by body, speech, and mind. And actually, of the three, the mind is really the major player, because so much of the words that come out of our mouth and the actions of our body are predicated on our minds, the thoughts, feelings, intentions of our mind. So you're absolutely right. What an understanding of cause and effect does, coming back to Chip's stepmother, is it helps us understand why right now things are unfolding the way they are, right? Why is Governor Scott the way he is, right? Why is the Florida legislature the way it is? Why are people like this? Why are people prejudiced? Why are people narrow-minded? Why is there war? Why, all those questions The answer is because of cause and effect, right? If you look deeply into it, you will understand all the causes, myriad causes that have conditioned human beings to think, act, behave, and speak in the way they do, right? So my understanding of karma is it takes us up to this moment. Now, and this may sound, and this is maybe what you were getting at. I mean, Buddhism is interesting because karma is not fate. This is important. Some people think, well, it's my karma, or it's like, again, almost like this is like it's fate. People interpret it as fate, just something I have to live out, and or it's the world's karma. People talk that way, but the world's karma is created by people. It's not created by a god, and nothing is fixed. Is that clear? So, you got to see how the interplay of all the Buddhist teachings and view come together. So nothing is fixed, right? Nothing is solid. So even this unfolding of karma is a propulsion. It's a movement in a certain direction. But if other variables intervene, obviously that direction can be modified or changed. Is that clear? So, that's why we're here. Why are we here? We're here because of our own good karma. I would say good karma. People who are in pain today may go, think it's their bad karma that brought them here, but I would say it is because of our good karma. We are learning, I cannot stop the arising within my mind of all this stuff from my past, these ways of thinking, these feelings, these memories, right? I cannot stop these propensities of my mouth to want to say certain things, or these actions, all right? Because all those things and the impulses and the thoughts and the feelings and the memories will all arise in the present because we have been there before. Right? We have thought these things before, we have felt these things before, we have memories of these, So it is all because, but, and this is the unique thing, and must be understood in terms of the Buddhist view, is there is a law of cause and effect, but also Buddhism teaches free will. Which means in the moment, we have the freedom to do something different. Now that depends on, again, a bunch of variables, right? Such as our understanding of what's going on, such as our mindfulness, our concentration, our aspiration, our dedication, our commitment, There's all kinds of other variables that will come into play in this moment that will, tell us, how we respond to the, again, it's a mixture. That's why, again, most of you, you wonder, and again, I certainly teach it, how simple this all is. And yet you may wonder, well, it sounds simple, but why does it kind of feel, a little more complicated than that? Again, it's because there is this whole matrix, even in terms of our transformation. We are consciously bringing in new causes so we can create new effects. And how that occurs, how we go about it, how much time we spend on it, how dedicated we are, how committed we are, how mindful, all those kinds of things also are coming into play. And they also are changing, right? That is why, it is said, if you want to change, then you really have to nurture, right, those new seeds in you, or they will not grow, or they'll, if you nurture them a little bit, they'll grow a little bit. If you nurture them a lot, they'll grow a lot. So it's, that's where we can intervene. I mean, that's how we can say, the world's a disaster, and yet be hopeful that the world can be transformed. Because it's not either or. You introduce new variables into this world system, into the beings in it, and they will produce a different type of world. But if you don't, they'll just continue, creating the same cause and effect. Now again, any explanation has to be a little simplistic. Right? Life is a little messier than words make it out to be. But again, we need to use words and concepts so we can see, so we can see the trees in the forest. So this, along with the Four Noble Truths, along with impermanence, the three marks of existence, this view of that cause and effect is the mechanism by which the phenomena in this impermanent, ever-changing world unfolds. There is a law, but it is not a law created by man. It is not a law created by a supramundane deity. It is not a law under the control of fates. It is a law that is created by each and every being in terms of their actions. Questions? Yes.
I've never questioned anything you said before.
Go right ahead. Straighten me out.
But this is something I'm having trouble wrapping my head around.
Mm-hmm.
If there's no self, how can there be free will?
Mm-hmm. You mean like who's saying who's saying it?
I mean, when something arises, and I can see, okay, I could react the way I've always done it, like I get irritated, or I could not. But on one hand, all the.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Who's moving that hand around?
Exactly.
Who? I mean, is that the self that's moving that hand around?
Just moving.
Oh, it's just moving on its own, without a self. Well, that's quite something. So let me get this straight. Your hand has a capacity of moving around on its own, and it's actually moving in sync with what you're saying. Well, that's even more wondrous. So that hand on its own, without you telling it what to do, moves around, and it moves around in perfect synchronicity with your words, and they kind of work wonderfully together. Is that correct? And you didn't plan it that way. And you just said no. Did you plan to say no? No. So there is some kind of intelligence or understanding that is not under your control, if I get this straight.
That's my whole point.
No, that's my whole point.
So where does free will come into that? It's just unfolding.
Please meditate deeply on this one. Look how you freely bowed. Right? Yeah, it is, we do want to believe that there's, the same way we want to believe, that there's got to be some kind of God or some kind of rational force or mind or something that's going to run in this whole thing, right? Because a thought that it's not can be very frightening to some people, right? In the same way, we want to believe there's got to be something inside here controlling everything, running the show. Well, it's the same thing. Yeah. Other causes and conditions have created certain types of thoughts and aspirations in you too. And they're all growing. And they come out. Right? There's a part of you that grew according to causes and conditions that liked certain types of behaviors no matter what the consequences were. Right? But now there's other types of conditions that have grown within your mind and everything, other types of seeds that have been watered that now give you a different message. And because there is this change in the watering. Right? Yeah, there is, we could say that there appears like there's something there who's kind of going, I'm not going to do that. I'm just not going there. Right? It certainly feels that way. Right? But if you look deeply to find that thing that you believe is making that choice, you won't find anything. Right? It doesn't mean there is not the appearance of, but it means on deep looking you see just because it appears that way, it does not mean that it's actually that way. So we know at the seventh level of consciousness, there is this mono-vijnana, which sort of has a controlling aspect to it, an executive kind of function, which I think is what you're talking about. So please study the mind, according to Buddhist psychology. But again, to say that it's a thing, a somebody, a permanent entity that dwells within that body, if you find him, please come tell me. I'd be very interested in meeting him. Okay? So this is, that's why we want to really understand these principles deeply. Other questions? Yes.
In terms of turning the wheel, karma as action, things that we've been doing. So sometimes there's really a sincere aspiration to see something differently, and say that in my mind. And sometimes there's a kind of following instruction, it's an expression of fake it till you make it. Like when you say, the thought comes of the past, let go, relax, and be present. So at that moment, the thought from the past seems more real, and yet I follow the instruction and bring myself back to the present. I'd like to think that even that action, even if it doesn't feel as wholehearted or I don't believe it as much, still turns that wheel, so that it's worth doing that 100 times a day. And
well, again, so the question is, how would you say your question? I mean, you're just a few words. So your question is, so even though one doesn't have a complete realization of something or understanding of something, still, if one is kind of following instructions, and even one then doesn't really deeply understand it or believe it yet, does that bring benefit? And of course it does, because there are other principles. That's the problem when we pick out one principle. Again, there's a fundamental principle that when we are healthy, or when we are committed to being healthy human beings, is very operating, which is we want to be happy. Right? We want to feel good. We want to feel well. And so when we act according to Dharma, it will feel good. Right? When we don't, like when you say, when you go down that habit energy of following those thoughts and acting on them, you will continue to reap an effect that now that you are mindful and aware, you will clearly see this does not create happiness, harmony, well-being, calmness, equanimity, equilibrium within me. Right? So there is a reinforcement that's often fairly immediate. That will help us also, quicken the pace of transformation. So it's not just that we're following orders or just doing something, you know what I'm saying? I mean, even if we're doing something that's good for our body, let's say, we're exercising more, or changing our diet, or, eliminating certain foods that we like, or things like that. In the short run, even though that may be a little forced, hopefully over time, we will feel better. Right, we'll like the way we look, and we'll feel lighter, and we'll be more energetic. So there is a payoff that is experienced when we're on the right path. In the same way, there's an experience a feeling that we will experience in our body mind. We're on the wrong path. Right? Where's Vivian? Vivian, remember you did last night, right? What did you discover about that food you were eating?
Oh, the food.
Yes.
All of a sudden there was a bit of pepper there.
Right. And was it a pleasant experience?
It was a surprise.
It was a surprise, but it wasn't pleasant, was it?
It was awkward.
It was awkward. It is hard to get Canadians to say something negative. I mean, what is it? Yes, but so again, and it could be left to your own druthers. You may not order that again, right? Yeah, or you may. It's just hard to get you guys to commit. Okay, well, if you were an American, you probably would not. You'd say, I don't want a second of that one, right? But again, you're much nicer than we are, so. Right, because of your experience. It was not a pleasant experience, I'm guessing, and you may not. So it's like that. I mean, there is that reinforcement. Again, the Four Noble Truths identify, bring very much to our consciousness all the various ways that we suffer, human beings suffer. And yet the path is about the cessation of suffering. So when we are clear, that's what I was saying the other day, or I'm not sure what you did in your box. I heard about your box, but I don't even know what that is. So I will have to get that transmission from you of the suffering box. Is that what you call it? I'll have to get that. But again, when you start taking all these mind states, your anger, your resentments, your hurts, your lacks, you know what I mean? And you start just suffering. It's all suffering. Stress, pressure, whatever it is, suffering. And if your commitment is, cessation of suffering, if you label it correctly, you will drop it. Or you'll do something with it. Because you don't want to suffer anymore. So again, that's why that identification of suffering and labeling is so important. Because again, remember I said earlier, one of the functions of a deluded, ignorant view is that we perceive things that are clearly, to the enlightened view, sources of suffering, we see them as sources of happiness, right? So this juicy thought comes along. Somebody did something to me, and what kind of person a day, and you know what I mean, right? And if we don't see it, if we don't see the hook, we will bite, because in the moment it looks juicy, right? Because in that moment, when we first chew on it, it feels delicious. I'm good, they're bad, right? I'm noble, they're ignoble. I'm right, they're wrong. You know what I mean? In the short run, it's quite tasty to us, to our ego, right? It feeds on stuff like that. But we know, when we have a right view, that all we're doing is eating something that has a hook, and that will create, for ourselves, it has taken us away from a sense of well-being, harmony, tranquility, openness, loving, all the qualities. So that's why it's important that we see this clearly. Any other questions about these teachings? Yes, Gunther.
So this is more probably a comment than a question.
Uh-huh.
Maybe. So I'm sitting here today, and I'm thinking, and this is all of my thinking, that free will.
No, and again, you're not. Gunther's not thinking. A thought is arising. So it's important that we see. We talk that way, don't we? Gunther's thinking, but if I actually said, "Is that really the way?"
So a mental construct is it?
There you go. All right. Now we're speaking the same language. All right.
That tells me that probably that I am here today, sitting here, started all out with some event, 1 billionth of a second after the Big Bang, where the first matter appeared and started materializing, it became our universe, became me, eventually became...
That's one theory, but go on.
Brought me here. And there's probably a lot of truth in this. At the same time, I resist this thought, and I think that it was me who decided to change.
Right.
Okay? So that makes me a little nervous, because it seems like I'm splitting my mind. On the one hand, I'm thinking it's all cause and effect. At the same time, I'm thinking that I have the free will to actually change the cause.
So this is now your background is science. Is that what? All right. So this is good, because in Buddhism, it is not either or; it's both and. Okay. Right. And in a certain way, that is a more complicated logical leap than it's, like you're saying, it's either this way or this way. And they seem to be, but the truth is begin to think both and. It's both. There is this kind of fairly clear, right, cause and effect relationship in everything we do. And yet at the same time, we do have the power to affect it. How much can we affect it? We don't know. See, we don't know, do we? And so it's more like that, right? We live in the world of cause and effect, right? So let's take global warming, which is, a big one, right? The news gets worse every day, right? Those people who 10 years ago said, if we do this, this, and this, and this, we can avert it. Now we're almost saying, no, we can't avert it. All we can do now is at this point is maybe lessen it or something. But does that mean not to make the effort? No. It means we have to make more of an effort. But it also understands that the effort we make is going on within this context of reality, of the way things are unfolding. So it's both and. It's not like Alex said, you get into a despairing thing or a nihilistic thing. Well, but you understand, I want to make this change. Forgive me for using the word I. But that's the way we talk in this Saha world. Okay? Right? I don't know whether I don't know what kind of effect it will have. It may start the ball rolling. It may not. Because I don't know what, the strength of these other forces. Right? How do we know? Right? It's like everybody here I guess everybody here is in the process of changing, right? You'll notice there are some habits, some ways of thinking, feeling, behaving that kind of change pretty easy. But there are other ones that change that seem to be more difficult, right? And that is, again, how do you know that? Because in the real world, you're working with yourself. right? And you find out then, some conditions are more easily modified. Others are stronger than I thought. Right? And it's a both and. It's an unfolding process. And in Zen, there is the sense of what's called the at the deepest level, we just don't know. That's hard for a human being to say, because we think, we should know everything, or there's an answer to something. But the truth is, we really don't know, do we? And again, it's like that. It's like the man on the rope. It's like, right, with all that, with the abyss below and the rat choring, gnawing on the rope above. Can I still appreciate the flower? Enjoy the berry, right? And in the same way, we don't know how this is all going to turn out, right? Right? I mean, there are some people right now who are prophesizing, ecological disaster, right? If you read the science, right? It's a disaster. There are other people, the end of life, the end of the, there are all kinds of stuff that people are saying, right? So there you are raising your beautiful children. Right, here we are. We don't know, do we? Right? That's just the truth, isn't it? So that analogy of the rope being gnawed at by the rat is not that extreme. Yes.
Since Gunther is a scientist, and I'm not sure he buys into the rope being gnawed at by the rat as an explanation.
Hey, would you like Gunther to speak for himself?
At the turn of the 20th century, the physicists had this great debate in the world, was light a wave or was light a particle? Mm-hmm. And it turns out that depending on the question, if you ask light a wave question, it's a wave, it acts like a wave. If you ask light a particle question, acts like a particle. So that's the kind of thing that Buddhism addresses. It's both and, depending on how you question it.
Right. And again, wave or particle are just concepts. The real truth is light is just light. Right? I mean, that's the truth.
But you wouldn't get a Nobel Prize.
Well, you wouldn't get a Nobel Prize. You might become a Buddha. So, your choice, Alex. Don't forget, even Nobel Prize winners are subject to the laws. So good. So if it... I remember his point. Okay, who has a question? Oh, Vivian, okay.
You raised the idea of levels of consciousness, and I wondered if you might want to expand on that in terms of cause and effect, or physics and Buddhism, or...
That's a whole nother... What? No, when I said levels of consciousness, it's really levels in the mind. So it's not really levels of consciousness, but it's just the 8 or 9 levels of the mind. In terms of eye, ear, nose, the consciousnesses of the organs, and then there's the mano vijnana, which is where that kind of feeling sense of an eye exists, that kind of executive part of the mind. And then there's obviously the deeper aspects, the alaya vijnana and things like that, the storehouse consciousness, where the seeds are all. So that's what I was referring to. Nothing as esoteric as levels of consciousness. I wouldn't even dare go there. All right. Have I missed another question? Well, Charlie's okay. We're trying to wind this up. Okay.
This is just on the topic of becoming a Buddha. How do we practice this specifically in our meditations? Like, how do we reflect on cause and effect?
Okay. This is a good question. So, are you okay on how to meditate on impermanence? Are you okay on how to meditate on dukkha, suffering, and the causes of suffering? Good. Well, isn't that enough for you? To keep reading? It's a lot. I mean, you're not satisfied with that, eh? You also. So, it is important to reflect. Okay? Again, the understanding of karma also then often gets into the whole realm of actions, which then gets into the precepts and the 5 mindfulness trainings, and right action and wrong actions, actions that produce well-being and actions that produce suffering. So I mean, there's a lot that are related to it. But I think the main thing is, Brian and the rest, is to reflect on how cause and effect, right? Because we tend to somehow believe that we're in control. I'm thinking my thoughts, I'm thinking my values, Again, if you remember Thai Nhat Hanh's poem, Call Me By My True Name, right? Remember he said, that's one of the clearest understandings of the law of cause and effect in a poetic way. He says what? He says, I am the 8-year-old girl raped by the pirate. I am the pirate who raped that girl. And then he goes on to say, right, if I had grown up in that village where that young boy grew up, in his pirate village, and all the seeds that were watered in me were seeds that said, this is the way, this is what we do. We are pirates, and we go out and we rape and pillage. He said, I am the pirate. So we want to understand that, to say there is free will implies that there is a conscious being who understands that. Free will. Most people are not acting from free will, unfortunately. Most people are not conscious of their conditioning that is driving them. They do not have mindfulness. So when thoughts, feelings, impulses, etc. arise in them, they have no way of stepping back, holding them in mindfulness, looking deeply to see where they're coming from, comparing them to an aspiration or whatever, how they want to be, and therefore acting. Right? That whole intervening process for most people does not exist. Right? So it is important, if you do not 100% accept what has been taught today, please examine it in your own life, in your brother's life, in your parents' life, in the people you know. Why are they the way they are? Why do they do what they do? And look deeply so you can see all the variables. You won't see them all, but you'll have enough to understand them. Right? When we understand the law of cause and effect, we have understanding, we have the capacity of understanding why things unfold the way they do. Right? And therefore we have the capacity of being compassionate. Because we understand that these poor people can't help themselves. Right? Your poor stepmother could not help herself. Right? That's the truth, isn't it? Again, it does not mean that you, because of the situation and your sister was dying, that you wouldn't exit her out, or you know what I'm saying? It's not as if, again, there's your free will to deal with it. But you're doing it from a place of understanding and even compassion. This poor woman doesn't have a clue what's appropriate and not appropriate, right? So it's like that. But again, when our minds are clear and understanding and compassionate compassion are present, we have the capacity of acting skillfully or wisely. But when we're just pissed, we will act from that. And our actions may be much less than skillful and just increase suffering. So, is everybody clear how to meditate? Again, to understand in your own life how you are the product of causes and effects, right? And of experiences, situations, influences, and that is why you are the way you are. Right? Nobody here made their own body. Who made your body? Your parents made your body. Right? We call it my body, but I didn't make my body. Right? Nobody here made their body. Your parents made your body. And it is growing according to its own laws, its own causation, its own cause and effect. Right? And that then the law of cause and effect is acting in every organ of your body, every system of your body. Right? Now again, do you have some capacity? Maybe. Right, Gunther? Some capacity may be affected. Yeah, you can do your best to eat the right food and be healthy, but, you could do all that and still what? Right. Drop dead of a coronary tomorrow, right? I mean, we don't know. Because our body has its own, it has a lot of inherited traits, etc. We don't know. And causes and conditions, the air we breathe, pollution, we don't, all kinds of stuff. So we want to see cause and effect in all areas. Again, so we understand. When we understand, we can live in equilibrium. We can live in equanimity. We are not disturbed by these arisings and passings. Right, Marilyn? Do good things happen to everybody? What? No, not all the time. Do bad things happen to people? Do unpleasant things happen to people? Traumatic things happen to people? All the time. That's just life. Right? Everybody's life unfolds according to causes and conditions. You look deeply in your life, you'll understand clearly why your life could not have unfolded any other way than it did. And it had nothing to do with you. It had everything to do with the causes and conditions. Until you began to wake up and you could begin to see what these causes and conditions were and realize you could chart another way for yourself. But until then, you were just like everybody else, weren't you? Right? And when you understand, you're free of all that, what was it called? Guilt. I mean, people have guilt, shame. I mean, those are all mind states that are unnecessary.